Hello, you're very welcome to the podcast. My name is Michael Harding. Thank you for being here. It's the bank holiday weekend, the August bank holiday weekend, the big special one. We're at, for me, the end of the year. September is always the beginning of the year, and then July finishes everything off, and then big rest, and then start again. And in August, there's loads to reflect on. For me, because it's a very special month, I love the 6th of August. It's the Transfiguration Feast in the Christian calendar. I love the 15th of August, which is the great Marian feast, the Assumption of Mary into heaven. It's also, by the way, like that 15th of August, that period is Lunasa, Mina Lunasa in Irish, but it is It's the Feast of Lunasa, which is celebrated in ancient days with things like going up to the top of mountains, Croagh Patrick, Frahan Sunday, Bilberry Sunday, and it ends with this moment in the 15th of August, which before the Christian times used to be like the Lammas Fair, the Muff Fair, the Puck Fair. All these big fairs were in the middle of August, around the 15th of August. So August is a very, very special month. Lunasa is a very special time. And I'm so looking forward to it, and I hope that I'll have good podcasts reflecting on stuff like that. However, back to today, back to the August bank holiday. I wanted to do something about Islam. And the reason is I found so much beauty, so much insight, so many reassuring, gentle ideas in Islam. Just forget, whenever I'm talking, forget about institutions, forget about organizations, forget about political structures, all those things which kind of swallow religion, swallow spirituality, and then regurgitate it as a kind of a hierarchical control. Control on people, control on, particularly on women, and have an endless amount of problems. I'm not saying that they're kind of essentially wrong. I mean, I wouldn't say like it's wrong to have religious institutions. Of course not. We actually need them. There's no other way to organise life and, have institutions that can provide services so that we can grieve when we lose our loved ones, and we can initiate and baptize and bring into society our new children and all the rest of it. So institutions are necessary, but because spirituality is so important, what I call religion, it's an unfashionable word, but I use it because religion is to behave religiously is kind of like, it's like in obedience. And that's the same as in Islam, where they say, the word Islam means surrender. So the core of religion for me, why I use the word, is because it's about God. It's about the God. It's about surrendering to the recognition that there is the God, a loving, conscious presence that's holding you. Holding not just you, but every atom of the universe is bound together in love, is bound together in a dynamic that ultimately, even though it goes through dark times and we are torn asunder and apart by suffering, and yet somewhere in the middle of it, we have this faith that there is an underlying ground of love that's cherishing us through these processes of pain. And that to me is God. And that comes out in every religion. That ontological idea, that sense that there's a God. And I don't take it as an idea, but I share it with you as something present, as something like that for me makes a difference in my life. It makes a difference when I get up in the morning. It makes a difference when I'm in trouble, when I have stress, when I have ill health, or when I age and grow old. It makes a difference to practice. It's like psychotherapy. And the odd thing is that I'd also concede that even though it may not have truth. Supposing I'm wrong in my faith, because I don't know, I just believe. And supposing that was not grounded on anything outside my own psyche, it still doesn't make it any less, because it's working as a psychotherapy. Faith works to heal you. That's just one simple truth. It's not an observation about institutions or the fundamental proof of God's existence, which is a really problematic sentence, because the concept of God is that which is outside existence, so how could God exist in the first place? But I don't want to go there on those, if you like, philosophical issues. I just want to stay in the here and now, because I am a storyteller. I make stories about my experience, and I share stories about my experience. And the kind of DNA that gives me is that my story opens my heart. My story opens my sense of presence to otherness. For me, engaging with you is almost like a prayer, because I'm engaging with otherness. There is, you imagine me sitting at the desk now. I'm sitting at this desk in the room on my own here in the hills above Lochalan, and yet I'm speaking to you. So it's like a dance. I'm embodying my faith in otherness. I'm speaking as if there was somebody else in the room. If somebody looked in the sliding doors and saw me here, they would think, is he talking to himself? Who's he talking to? Is he talking to somebody that's invisible? And then they would see the microphone and they would say, no, he's making a recording, because that's natural. But there's no doubt that when I do make a recording, when I do speak to you, I am alive in a different way, because I am embodying something, the dynamic of otherness. And it's exactly the same when I pray or when I meditate. Because when I meditate, I don't just sit in the meditation in the consciousness of like, oh, I'm here now and I'm looking at my nose, or I'm looking at a single point on the floor. I am feeling my body. I am present in my body. I am present in my body. I go beyond that. I let go of that. I bring myself to the point of being consciously aware of my physical body in a space that I'm staying still. I think that to me is, there's lots of people of different disciplines of half lotus and full lotus positions, and all the various ways that you hold your hands and your thumbs and your eyes and so forth. For me, bottom line is I don't close my eyes fully, and I don't move. And I keep the back straight as a rod, eyes just slightly open, and then remain still. That would be as loose as I can get to a sense of right posture or prayerful posture. But I don't just sit in that and then get up 20 minutes later triumphantly thinking, I was quite focused there, No, I try, and when I'm in that stillness, become aware of otherness. Become aware of otherness, which is manifesting through the real material world around me. Everywhere I look, I see God. I won't go into this now too much, because I'm going to do a separate podcast on this. But I'm just saying for the moment that it is so beautiful to use prayer, to use faith, to use religion as a therapy to help you feel well and to carry you through life's difficulties. And that's where I'm coming from. And because on this particular weekend, I'm talking about Islam and the riches and beauties that I sense are in that huge and wonderful tradition, and the gentility that is in Islam. You'll get it if you go to audiobooks or you go to Kindle or any library, and look for books on Sufi. Sufi is the wisdom tradition, separate a little bit and integrated into Islam. Some people would say that Sufi tradition exists before Islam. And I think they'd be right, actually. I think that Jesus fits into the tradition of the wisdom teachers, the storytellers who had wisdom in the stories. But that beautiful, gentle wisdom that I experience when I open my heart to Islamic ideas, I think is very, very valuable, very enriching in Western culture, because it's all around us, and because we think too much about the institutions. We think too much about Christian institutions and about Islamic institutions, and we get all nervous and uneasy and thinking, oh, I wouldn't want to be doing that. And I'm with the idea of letting go of institutions, but there is a new journey for people of faith. There is a new path and a new road ahead for people who believe. I think there may be even a very, very important way that modern secular psychotherapy, particularly stuff in, well, for one example, the Gestalt system of psychotherapy. I think there are things in modern culture like that which also embody a sense of otherness and a sense of reverence and openness for otherness. And I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere along the road you find the spirituality and faith that exists at the moment within Christianity or within Islam finding a great partner in those modern psychotherapies. That, you know, the way, let's say, Christianity absorbed Greek philosophy for centuries. The basic ideas in Greek philosophy became swallowed by the Christian tradition, and it gave Christianity a methodology to express itself. So I think it may be the same in the future with the whole area of psychotherapy. I think the word you'd probably use is psychiatry. Psychiatry being the overall umbrella that reflects psychotherapy and psychology, and so, you know, that great revolution that began with people like Freud and Jung in the 19th century. I think that will yet give us a language that people of faith within Christian or Islamic tradition will find a very, very useful and agreeable context within which to explain the heart of faith in God. So I'm making a real effort now to share with you two stories that come from my column in the Irish Times, and the first one was just a light-hearted meditation on my old friend, the General. And it all happens in the town of Drumshanbo. A man wearing orange lycra shorts and a cycling helmet was sitting outside the Jackalope Cafe at the Shed Distillery in Drumshanbo. I was waiting for the General, but he hadn't arrived, so I chatted with the cyclist. He didn't look like an athlete. He was so puce in the face that I thought he might be on the verge of a coronary event. "You look very winded for a man that was just pedalling a bike," I ventured. He said, "I was cycling around Shimore and I stopped for the view, and then I decided to climb up." I said, "No wonder you're winded. You'd not see me on the top of Shimore." He looked at my distended belly and said, Perhaps you should try some cycling yourself. It was a fair point, but as I said to the General later when he arrived, I have no intention of getting up on a bicycle ever again. Then he brought our coffees outside, me and the General, and we sat there outside. Since there had been rumours all morning that the sun might make a brief appearance before noon. I explained to the General that the Jackalope Café is where anybody who is anybody comes nowadays for a coffee or lunch. He said, "I didn't know that there was a chattering class in Drumshanbo." The chattering class, as I declared, come from far and wide nowadays, and the buns in the Jackalope Café are second to none. I'm delighted the General is back. I was afraid he might not make it through COVID. He had phoned me from Mullingar the previous day. "I'm home," he declared. "My God," I exclaimed, "I thought you were dead." He said, "I escaped." I said, "You can't escape from a nursing home. You were discharged." "It wasn't a nursing home," he said. "It was a care centre. I had long COVID, but I'm over it." I'm delighted to hear that. "I shall come visit you tomorrow," he announced, in a foghorn voice across the phone. He uses WhatsApp to save money. But he must have had a bad internet connection because I couldn't hear a word he was saying. It was as if he was calling from Mongolia. "I shall come up to see you." I said, "You've no transport." "Au contraire," he said, "I bought a jeep." And he duly arrived, and there we were, just outside the cafe, where he kept a beady eye on the other customers. The man in the lycra was fingering a croissant. "So if you're not going to get a bicycle," the General said, "perhaps you should try golf." I don't like golf, I confessed. When I was 10, I tried it, but I was useless, so I gave it up. In fact, I gave up football, tennis, chess, Scrabble, and even Monopoly because I was useless. And it takes an extremely low level of self-esteem to conclude that you're no good at Monopoly. I had visions of the General arriving in an 80,000 euro Jeep with digital screens and quadraphonic sound, but I was wrong. "I'm investing in horses," he explained. So he actually arrived in a 99 Toyota Land Cruiser. "The farmer who sold it to me said he'd prefer to see this vehicle come up his laneway rather than anything made in the past 20 years. These old Jeeps were assembled better." He opened the back door so I could admire it. "But it's a shambles," I exclaimed, looking at the empty whiskey bottles and taking in the stale smell of unwashed stable blankets. "Admittedly, she's no show pony," he said, caressing the rusted tow bar, "but she's a mighty workhorse." A coat hanger was protruding from the aerial socket on the bonnet. "I can even get BBC," he said, "when I'm driving around Fermanagh." "And what were you doing in Fermanagh?" I wondered. "Looking for horses," he declared. "I'm going to buy and sell on a quick turnaround. You see, I'm back to my old self." "Well, at least you survived COVID." "I did," he agreed triumphantly. "And we must be positive. We are still young men." We climbed into the back, into the Jeep. I did the same. He was driving, I was in the passenger seat. We fastened our belts. The cyclist was licking his fingers. "By the way," the General remarked, "I can understand the need for helmets, but why the garish padded lycra?" It was rhetorical, and I offered no reply. The General pushed the pedal to the floor, and sufficient fumes emerged from the back of the vehicle as would make the entire club of cyclists weep with despair. And the second piece I'm going to read for you is just something that happened in Birmingham. The taxi man was from Africa, and it was his eyes in the rear-view mirror that captured me as we drove through Birmingham. Initially, I couldn't find him or the white Toyota I had booked with Uber. I was walking in the wrong direction at the airport until he tooted the horn from a distance. If my good wife had been here, she would have corrected me, I said, apologetically. I'm always going in the wrong direction. She steers me right. This is the value of a wife, he laughed. They steer you. And he showed me his wedding ring and said he was 25 years married. And that's when I noticed his eyes in the mirror, like an ocean of joy. I was in Birmingham to attend a birthday party and meet relations, so I lodged myself in a small hotel on the Coventry Road and went shopping. Would you have a waistcoat in black? I asked the attendant in a clothing store near Spark Hill. He sized me up and said, You will be a 44, and then instantly produced a garment that fitted perfectly. I said, I am so pleased. All I need now is something to eat. I'd love to taste some spices from Pakistan or Afghanistan. Go to the Kabul Darbar on Ladypool Road, he said, without hesitation. Which I did. I sat in the corner while a family of 9 commanded a table beside me, presided over by an elderly gentleman in a pakol hat, who kept a close eye on me. I ate a mighty stew of lamb and spice, with naan bread served on a hanger that stood on the table beside my plate. The family ate joyfully too, the adults taking photographs and the children licking their fingers, and the elder still watching me with the eyes of an old lion. I left the premises with a glad heart and rested not far away on a bench where I met a woman from Nigeria. And it was her eyes, too, that I noticed first as she approached. For no particular reason, I greeted her in Irish, and she inquired as to what the language was. Irish, I replied. Hausa is my mother tongue, she said, but I was born and reared in London. Her eyes were as sad as 2 small lakes on an autumn afternoon. Do you often visit Nigeria? I wondered. No, she said. It is my home, but I was there only once, 7 years ago. I didn't like the mosquitoes and I got ill. But I liked the village. It was very slow. She spoke the word slow, slowly, and with unbearable nostalgia. Where I live is like that too, I said. Leitrim is slow. Slow is good, she said. I come to Spark Hill for avocados and to pay my electricity at the pay point. I'm here for a party, I said. It was a long way to come for a party, she thought, and the more I told her, the sadder she became. But the taxi driver on the way back to the hotel was great fun. I am from just outside Islamabad, he declared. So I said I was from just outside Drumshanbo. We are all the same, he concluded. We all live just outside somewhere. And more than anyone else that day, he had beautiful eyes. Before closing the door of his car at the hotel, I said, You laugh a lot. "You must be happy." And he said, "Yes," and he laughed again. I tried on the waistcoat in the hotel bedroom, and that evening I wore it to the do. The music was country, and the dancing was wild, and I jived with relations and strangers until late in the night. And the following day we reconvened at noon to watch the Sligo Cavan match on the telly. People tucked into Sunday lunch, and pints were flowing, and when the game was about to commence, everyone stood up for the national anthem. And the woman beside me, who knew all the words, sang it out like a lark, and the entire pub joined with the television. The walls were lined with photographs of Irish dancers and their costumes and curls, and the players on the screen began chasing the ball, and it was as if everyone there, content with their dinners, had been suddenly gathered into one single village. But all I could think of was the woman on the bench and the look in her eyes when she spoke about home. Now, that little piece is 100% factual. And that's where it all started for me. The interest in Birmingham for me was very low. I thought, I'm not enamoured by going over to an English city to meet relations and to end up at an Irish pub. However, I hadn't been really in an Irish club or pub like that, ever. And there was a beautiful sense of community. There was a beautiful sense of belonging. It was really like a village. The party was on the Saturday night. It was great fun. It was lively. It was like a big wedding in one sense. But then the next morning, or the next lunchtime, when everybody reconvened, there was just an amazing sense of belonging. There's like part of Ireland exists in England. And it's no less Irish. It's an Ireland that belongs in community centres and in all sorts of places culturally and politically, all across England, all across Britain. And just because I don't happen to be there very often, I don't come up in contact with it. And I have to say I found it just so homely, so like I could have been in the middle of Mayo. And the contrast as well for me was, the shocking contrast was that not only was there an immigrant community from Ireland that I felt I wanted to be part of, but there was a huge community of people from places like Pakistan and India. Hugely, and particularly from Pakistan. And I never thought of Birmingham like that until I walked down Spark Hill and other areas in the city that would be like 90% people originally ethnically from Pakistan, or if you like, Islamic. And at one roundabout, I remember in the taxi seeing the Birmingham Central Mosque in front of us as we were driving. My goodness, what an enormous and wonderful cathedral. Now, there's some people have huge difficulties with the politics of religion. I don't. I see religion as opening the heart, and that kind of Islamic energy excited me so much in Birmingham that I says, I really need to work harder at sharing some of this and some of my feelings about Islam with the podcast community. There's a close friend who comes to me sometimes and he explains Islamic ideas to me. He's a Syrian man. And I don't see him as often as I would like to, but that's just the reality that I'm up in Donegal writing a book. Anyway, I wanted to share those two stories with you before I got into a full kind of personal meditation on Islam. And that's it. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed the 2 podcasts that go out this weekend. Bye-bye.